everyone, and welcome back to Kardec Ready for Teens. For those of you who don't know, Kardec Ready for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens to learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes sense to us and is more relatable to us as teenagers in today's society. Before we begin today, I'd like to wish you guys all a Merry Christmas, and I hope you had a very Merry Christmas. But as much as Christmas is a time to celebrate and to relax and to get together with family and to think about Jesus, we still must need to do that last key part. Think about Jesus and do what he wanted. He wanted us to study and to continue to learn and not just relax and sit around and do nothing all break, because we do all have this break that most of us, we just want to finally just relax, just do nothing. But maybe we can take this little half hour here, and then maybe you on your own can take little times to study, because that's what our goal is, to study, to work harder so we can improve. So with that being said, let's get to the point where we left off last week in the Spirit's book, and let's continue to study and work towards that perfection that Jesus taught us about. So last week we started chapter 10 of part 2 of the Spirit's book, and this chapter is titled Occupation and Missions of the Spirits. So we're talking about what the spirits in the spirit world, what their jobs are, what their missions are, what they're doing in the spirit world. So we left off on question 5. Do spirits sometimes meddle in our occupations and pleasures? So do spirits sometimes come in between our occupations, or do they kind of interfere with our occupations and our pleasures and what we're doing? And the spirits answered, commonplace spirits, as you call them, yes. They are unceasingly around you, and at times take a very active part in all that you do, according to their nature. It is good that they do so in order to drive men and women forward in their different walks of life, exciting or moderating their passions. So what they're saying here is that yes, they do sometimes come in our lives, because there's these spirits that are around us all the time, and they're around us so much that they are influencing stuff that we do. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in. He says, spirits occupy themselves with the things that this world, according to whether they are more evolved or less so. High-order spirits undoubtedly have the ability to consider them in minutest detail, but only do so to the degree that it is useful to progress. Low-order spirits only attach an importance to such things in proportion to the remembrance that still present in their memory, and to material ideas that are not yet extinct. So what he was basically saying here is that the high-order spirits, they're going to pay attention and try and help and get involved with stuff that it might be a little tiny detail, but they know it's important. They know it's useful to your progress. They know it's somehow beneficial. So it might be even the smallest thing that they pay attention to, but in general, the higher spirits are going to be paying attention to details that they know are useful, that they know are going to be helpful. And low-order spirits, they might just be influencing parts of your lives that they're still attached to, because they're still not completely away from this material attachment. So they're kind of paying attention to that stuff and these things that are left in their memory of their incarnated life. Question 568. Do spirits who have missions to fulfill do so while in the errant or incarnate state? So the spirit has a mission. Do they do it when they're in the spirit world, or do they do it when they're incarnated on a planet such as Earth? And the spirits answered, they may do so in either state. For certain errant spirits, it is a great occupation. So they can do the mission in both. They can do some in the spirit world and then some incarnated on Earth. So they can do it either. And from some errant spirits, and we remember that the word errant means that they're disincarnated, they're in the spirit world. For those, it's a great occupation. It's like a job for them to have this mission going, to work on this mission in the spirit world. Question 569. What do the missions that may be entrusted to errant spirits entail? So what are these missions? These spirits are in the spirit world and they're given a mission. What is it? And the spirits answered, "They are so varied that it would be impossible to describe them. Besides, there are those that you would not be able to comprehend. Spirits fulfill the will of God, and you are not able to grasp all the divine designs." So what they're saying here is that these spirits, their missions are so different. There's so many different ones that it would be impossible for them to sit here and list, oh, they do this, they do this, they do this, because there's always something else that they're doing. And also, these missions, they're of course coming from God, and they're so divine that our earthly minds would not be able to comprehend it, because the words that they would use to describe it wouldn't make any sense to us, and we wouldn't be able to understand that fully. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, "Spirits' missions always have the good as their purpose. Whether as a spirit or as a human, they are in charge of helping the progress of humankind, nations, or individuals within a varying range of ideas that may be more specialized or less so, in order to prepare the way for certain events and to oversee the accomplishments of certain things. Some have more restricted missions for a certain personal or entirely localized manner, such as helping the sick, the dying, the afflicted, and as guides, watching over those who are their protection, enduring them, and directing them with their counsels, or good thoughts they suggest. One could say that there are as many kinds of missions as there are kinds of interests to watch over, whether in material realm or in the moral realm. A spirit advances according to how well it's performed its duty." So one thing that we can say about all these missions is that it's all for the good. There's no mission that's like, oh, do this bad thing or do something that's not right. All these missions are aimed towards good, as the good is the purpose. And whether it's a spirit or a human, they could be doing stuff like taking care of the sick, taking care of the dying. They could be helping the progress of humankind, maybe by just helping individuals, maybe by helping a grand organization, something big. So whether little or small, they could be helping one little specific one person, one little group, or they could be helping a huge group. And all these missions, once they're doing it well, that's how they'll advance. That's how you'll know that they're doing good, is that they're doing these missions well and stuff is going well. So there's so many different types of missions, because if we think about it, there's if we say, okay, there's a spirit that's looking over sicknesses, but there's so many different sicknesses. So maybe, okay, there's a few spirits that are generally looking over the sick, but then there could be spirits whose mission is a specific type of illness. And we know that there's so many of those, so that already is so many missions, and that's only dealing in the area of sickness. So there's an endless amount of missions that these spirits could have. But of course, what they all have in common is that they're all with the purpose of good. Good is the outcome. Question 570. Do spirits always comprehend the design that they are charged with executing? So do spirits always understand that why they're doing something? Maybe they're told, okay, you have to go do this, but do they know why they are doing that? And the spirits answered, no. There are those who are blind instruments, while others know full well the purpose for which they act. So there's some who, like they said, they're blind instruments. They're just doing something because they were told to, but they don't really understand why they're doing it. But it's still helpful because they're doing what they're supposed to, and that something is helping, but they don't know why. But of course there are those who do know fully well that, okay, I'm supposed to do this because of this and this and this. So it can go either way. There are some, though, who don't understand why they're doing it, but they're just doing it. They're just kind of following orders blindly. Question 571. Are advanced spirits the only ones who have missions to fulfill? So is it only advanced spirits that have missions? And the spirits answered, a mission's importance is in relation to the spirit's ability and elevation. The courier who carries a dispatch also fulfills a mission, though it is not that of a general. So what they're saying here is that your mission depends on how evolved you are and your ability. So yes, a lot of the advanced spirits do have missions, but less advanced spirits have missions as well, because like they say here, so the person, there's different ranks, and there's the general, who of course he has a big mission, but the little messenger also has a mission. It's not as big as the generals, but he does have a mission. So there different level of spirits can have missions, but they'll have different missions depending on how evolved they are. Question 572. Is the mission of a spirit imposed on it, or does it depend on its will? So is the mission like given to you? Is it like, oh, here's your mission? Or does the spirit say, oh, I would really like to do this? And the spirits answered, a spirit asks for it and is happy to receive it. So the spirits ask, okay, I want a mission. And maybe they ask for a specific one. And when they do get a mission, they're really happy to have that. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, may the same mission be requested by several spirits? So they're saying, so there's one mission. Could several spirits get that same mission? And the spirits answered, yes, there are always several candidates, but not all are accepted. So maybe there's always several spirits that come up and say, oh, I would like this mission. And there's going to be a few that are requesting the same, but not all of them are going to be picked. But there can be several of them that are picked. It's kind of like asking for a job, or like applying for a job, saying, oh, I'd be interested in that job. And of course, there's going to be several other people who are interested in that same job, but maybe they're only going to take 2 people, or maybe they're only going to take 1, and so not everyone's going to be picked, but everyone might be requesting the same job. Question 573. What does the mission of incarnated spirits entail? So now we're talking, so what are the spirits who are incarnated, who are on like Earth, like us? What are their missions? What do their missions look like? And the spirits answered, instructing human beings, helping them to advance and improve their intuition by direct and material means. Missions are of various degrees of generality and importance. However, the one who cultivates the soil fulfills a mission as surely as the one who rules or teaches. Everything in nature is linked together. At the same time in which a spirit is purifying itself through incarnation, it is also working to fulfill the designs of providence. Each one has its own mission in this world, because each one can be useful for something. So mainly the spirits who are incarnated, their main missions are to help human beings, or to help progress the earth, to help put humans in the right direction. And of course, just like in the spirit world, there are going to be various degrees. There are going to be little missions, and there's going to be really big missions. There's going to be missions to help maybe a small community, or missions to help a whole country. So there are different levels, but everyone has something that they could be doing that's going to help. Everyone has a little mission inside them. If they can do one good thing, if everyone did one good thing, think of how much better the world would be. So all of us have one little mission that could help the world. Question 574. What could be the earthly mission of intentional, useless persons? So there's these people that they're just intentionally useless. So you can see that there's nothing that they do that's helpful in any way. And so what possibly could be their mission? And the spirits answered, there really are persons who live only for themselves and who do not know how to make themselves useful for anything. They are poor beings whom we should pity because they will painfully expiate their intentional uselessness, and their chastisement frequently begins, even in this world, through weariness and dissatisfaction with life. So there are some people who they don't do anything of themselves. They only think about themselves, and besides helping themselves, they're pretty useless. They don't do anything to help anyone else for any type of good. But these these spirits, maybe they seem wealthy and maybe they seem like they have the dream job and the dream life, but we should pity them because they're really not doing good things, and they're going to have to pay for that in the end. If they're going to waste his whole life doing nothing, they're going to pay for that because, like we see a lot, all these rich people with all these dream lives, they're not happy. In the end, they're dissatisfied. So they're already paying for it, and eventually they will pay for it even more. And they're going to have to make up for all this useless time that they spent. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, since they had the right to choose, why did they prefer a life that could not be of any use of them? So the spirits can choose what kind of life they're going to go into, more or less. So more or less they can choose. So why would they choose, oh, let me go into a life that I'm not going to have to do anything? So why would they do that if they know it's just going to hurt them in the end? And the spirits answered, among spirits, there are lazy ones who recoil before a life of work. God allows them to do so. They will understand the inappropriateness of their uselessness later, and at their own expense, and they will be the first to ask to make up for lost time. Also, they had perhaps chosen a more useful life to begin with, but once in action, they rejected it, allowing themselves to be misled by the suggestions of spirits who incite them to idleness. So what they're saying, so sometimes there's these lazy spirits and they just sit there and they're like, oh, this life, can I just relax? Can I not work that hard this life? So they asked that and said, so God lets them do that because God knows they're going to learn from that. So God lets them do that, and so they come and they live this rather useful life. And then eventually it hits them and they realize, and eventually they'll be the ones asking, oh, please, give me something to do because I want to make up for that time. So they do learn from it. So that's why there are some people that are like this. And sometimes these people, they did choose lives that had stuff that they had to do. But once they incarnated, they were kind of drifted away from that, and then they ended up doing nothing because they were influenced to being kind of useless. Question 575. Common occupations would seem to be duties rather than missions per se. According to the idea normally associated within the word, a mission has a sense of importance that is less exclusive and especially less personal. From that point of view, how can we tell if persons have real missions on earth? So they're saying here, so usually when we think of mission, we think that it's more important than just a job. You say, okay, I have a job, I have to do this. But a mission, it sounds like there's a lot of importance to it. So they're saying, so how can we tell if people have real missions, like really important missions? And the Spirit said, by the great things they do, and by the progress that they enable their fellow beings to make. So if a person has a real mission, we'll see that by the great things that they're doing and the people they're influencing. If they're influencing all these people for the good and they're doing great things, then we can tell that this person had a real mission to come and help and to influence, and we'll see that. Rather than those who just have a job and who are just doing what they're told and maybe they don't know why they're doing that. Question 576. Are those who have an important mission predestined for it before their birth, and do they have knowledge of it? So those who have really important missions, and who they knew that they had this mission before birth, do they have knowledge of it? Do they know that, okay, I'm going in with this really important mission? And the Spirit said, yes, sometimes, but more often they are unaware of it. They only have a vague notion of it when they arrive on the earth. Their mission is traced out after their birth, and according to circumstances as God drives them along the path on which they must fulfill the divine designs. So sometimes when they get to earth, they do know. They're like, oh yes, this is my mission, I have to do this. But more often than not, so most times, they don't know. So maybe they have this vague thing. Maybe it's like a feeling they have, like an instinct, like, oh, I should do this, or, oh, I want to do this, but they will be guided along the path, and their life will kind of work out in a way that they end up fulfilling their mission, or they get put in the circumstances to help fulfill their mission. So they will be put in those paths. Their lives will kind of be guided to kind of push them in the path that they need to be for their mission. But most times, they don't really remember it. They just have maybe a vague subconscious thought of, oh, I should do this, or, oh, maybe I want to help with this. But it's not something that they directly know. Question 577. When individuals do something useful, is it always in virtue of a previous and predestined mission, or might they have received an unforeseen mission? So, when they're doing something useful, they're doing something good that's helping people. Is it always because of this mission that they had, or can it be an unforeseen mission that was kind of just thrown upon them and received really quickly? And the spirits answered, not everything that individuals do is the consequence of a predestined mission. Instead, they are frequently the instrument a spirit uses in order to perform something it considers useful. For example, a certain spirit thinks it would be a good idea to write a book, which it would actually write if it were incarnated, so it seeks out the writer most capable of comprehending its thoughts and most capable of acting on it. It suggests the idea and directs its execution. Thus, this individual did not originally come to Earth with the mission of doing this particular work. The same thing applies to certain works of arts and discovery. It should be further noted that during its body's sleep, the incarnated spirit communicates directly with the disincarnated one in order to discuss how the mission is to be carried out. So, not always is everything useful a thing of a mission. So it was never like, oh, every single useful thing. It was like, oh, here's your mission, you have to go to Earth, you have to do this, and then they do it. Sometimes it is thrown upon them. So like this, like there's a spirit who has a great idea and they want to write a book, but they're not incarnated, so they can't write this book. So they find a spirit who's compatible with them and who will write this book and who's able to write this book. So then they find the spirit and they talk to the spirit, of course, in sleep. In sleep, they communicate with each other, and then this book gets written. So this incarnated spirit, it was never their mission to write this book, but it kind of just happened that it happened, and it's a useful book now. So not always does everything that we do that's useful have to be in a mission, per se. Question 578. Can a spirit fail in its mission through its own fault? And the spirit said, yes, if it is not a high-order spirit. So, spirits can fail their mission. If it's not a high-order spirit who has full control and knows what they're doing, then yeah, you can fail in your own mission. And there's a second part to this question, and it says, what are the consequences for it? So you fail your own mission because you did something wrong. Now what? What's the consequences? And the spirits answered, it will have to start the work over. That is its punishment. Furthermore, it will suffer the consequences of the problems it has caused. So, if you fail your mission, you're just gonna have to start all over. Start back from square one, because maybe you can do that in the same reincarnation, or maybe you can't, and maybe you have to go through a whole other reincarnation to start over and to try this mission again. And also, you're going to have to suffer the consequences of the mistakes you made, of whatever mistakes you made and whatever harm it caused. Then you're going to have to, and the problems, then you're going to have to fix those problems as well as starting over. Question 579. Since a spirit receives its mission from God, how could God entrust an important mission of general interest to a spirit who may fail? So, if God gives these missions, why would he give a mission to someone he knows might fail? And the spirits answered, doesn't God know whether his general will be victorious or defeated? Rest assured that it is so, and the divine plans, when important, do not rely on those who might abandon the work in the middle of it. The whole issue for you is the knowledge of the future, which God possesses, but which is not given to you. So God is able to know the future, to know everything that's going to happen, and know that, okay, if this one person or all these people stop their mission right in the middle, we'll still be okay. They know that it's okay if you stop your mission right in the middle and you don't finish it, or it takes you too long to finish, or you have to start over a lot of times. It's not going to dramatically affect the future. It's not going to be a huge problem that's gonna like cause all Earth to not exist anymore. So God knows that these missions, it's okay if it stops a little bit in the middle. We're just working towards getting there. And of course, the faster we do it, the better we do it. It's much better, but if it takes us a while, that's okay too. Question 580. Does a spirit who incarnates to fulfill a mission have the same apprehension as the one who incarnates to undergo a trial? So there's spirits who incarnate to do a mission, to fulfill a mission, and there's spirits who incarnate to have a trial. So to be given some sort of test, and to they have to prove if they've learned it, or they're going to keep being given this test until they learn it. And then there's some who are given a mission to help this certain group or something like that. So do they have the same apprehension? And the spirit said, no, it has experience. So the spirit who's coming to fulfill a mission has more experience than the one that's undergoing a trial, because the one that's undergoing a trial, they're still gaining this experience, this life experience. They're still going through these trials to gain this experience. And then once you've gained it, then you can come back for a mission. And that's where we'll leave off today. But before we leave off, I'd like to read our message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations for today's date, December 26th. This one's titled, Making Mistakes. If I had my own life to live again, I'd make the same mistakes, only sooner. Mistakes can make us more interesting than the things we do right. We may cause pain to ourselves or others, hamper our professional progress, or just plain embarrass ourselves. But oh, what we learn from our mistakes. I don't set out to make mistakes, but I make them anyways. But I have to admit, now that some time has gone by, some of my mistakes have been a lot of fun. I'm Bia, and this is Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.